Listen, laugh, and learn with Sacha and Ish as they share their experiences, thoughts, and tips to build skills that are not so average and a career that's not so ordinary. This is the Not So Breakfast Show.
All right, welcome to the podcast today, and this is a special edition mashup of 4 of our favourite episodes. Episode 11, the one about the 3 base human fears. We've got episode 28, the one about focus, episode 30, the one about dealing with the voices in your head, and episode 40, how to assist in your own rescue. We are mashing it up this week because Sacha is still doing what Sacha does, and she is travelling the world, but she is back next week. So that's it from me, so let's get to the mashup. Not so original, but totally epic. Oh, well, the topic we are talking about today is assisting in your own rescue. And I think this is an important topic because I think so many times we're waiting at our work and we're waiting for the opportunity to come, or we're waiting to be put on the course, or we've got this issue and we're waiting for someone else to solve it. But I reckon there's a whole lot of stuff that we can just do to get ourselves out of those situations, because at the end of the day, staying anywhere is a choice.
Yeah, it's kind of like that thing where you get stuck. And I've noticed it even today. So I'm really trying to not be a dick about aging, because having faced death in the past, and I don't say that lightly, let me explain this. I rang my mum this morning. And she said, "Happy birthday, darling." And she burst into tears. And she said, "I've just been having a big, wet, sobby cry because it's your birthday." And I said, "Oh, Mum, yay, it's great that it's my birthday." And she said, "Yeah, but it must be a pent-up kind of release of perhaps she never thought I'd make it to 48. Yeah. And so every birthday feels special to them." And I can get that, because if one of my kids had been unwell, I know that every birthday would be treasured. So I have this kind of, I am grateful for every single year I have. So I'm never going to be a person that goes, "Oh, I'm trying to fight aging." But that said, I feel like, and this is a technical word, I feel like a piece of shit at the moment. Like, I just feel old and haggard, and everything hurts a bit. And I went back to dance, and I could do half the class, and then I sort of had to leave. And as I was leaving, the tutor said to me, "Yes, no, well, that was well done. Maybe try a few bar classes before you come next week." And I'm like, "Shut up, dick." I'm just getting back into it, right? He was amazing. But, my point is, it's really easy in my mindset to really find myself going down the spiral of getting stuck and feeling the pressure or feeling the weight of being older and what I'm making that mean. So I love that we're talking about this today, because at various times throughout the day, today, I've been saying to myself, come on, snap out. Every day is a bloody gift, and what are you going to do with it? And that kind of leads into this idea of taking responsibility and taking accountability for what's happening, and not just wallowing in the morass of how you feel at any given moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what they say, old age is a gift denied by many. And it's that whole getting older thing. And I can empathize with your mum. I mean, as being a parent of a child that also faced death with open heart surgery and everything that went along with that, every birthday, there is something about that triggers. And I don't think you ever stop loving your kids, obviously. It's like...
Well, I hope not.
Like, maybe it's 49.
Yeah, let's see how next year goes.
She just doesn't even answer the phone. That's But yeah, no, I definitely get it. So why don't we start moving into this? And I know that assisting in your own rescue is a topic that we've often used when we've been presenting together. And it really is taking responsibility for your personal situation.
Yeah, so when you go whitewater rafting in Queenstown, is the adventure capital of the world here in Aotearoa, and there's like hundreds of ways to die in Queenstown, and you pay for the privilege. And it's actually not a joke, because people do, really sadly pass. And we have a family friend who passed at a really young age when he was whitewater rafting. So I don't take this topic lightly, but when you go whitewater rafting, you have a big safety briefing. And one of step 4 on the safety sign says you must participate in your own rescue. And I remember reading that and thinking, what? if I fall out, I'm just going to flap around like a flounder in fresh water saying, rescue me. But they were really clear that you have to do certain things along the way that will help facilitate your rescue. Try and get your paddle back in the air so they know where you are. And that made sense to me, in the same way that when you're on a plane, they say put your own oxygen mask on first. And it really struck me what a metaphor this was for life, the idea that we must participate in getting ourselves out of the situations we find ourselves in. We have to take an active role when we become unstuck. And so it's an idea that you and I have talked about a lot. How does it start for you? What do you think some of the first steps are?
Well, before we even get into the first steps, can I just say, if you fell out of a raft, I know exactly what would happen. You would gracefully float to the top and then glide down the river on your back, because you float like no one on earth.
I am an excellent floater, that's true.
Well, I think really when we look at the steps of assisting in your own rescue is actually switching on the filter that you do have a lot of control. You can decide how you are responding to things. There will be things that you can influence or make changes to immediately, even within a situation that you're not that happy about. So switching on that level of awareness and having that level of awareness is important. It's because some people tend to maybe put on a bit of a victim mentality when things happen. And they might have learnt to respond a certain way to things. They train elephants. They tie them up to these chains, and then the elephant can't get away. And then eventually they can just put a peg in the ground with a rope around its leg. And the elephant could walk away whenever it wants, but it never does, because it just learns that it's stuck. And I think sometimes if you've got into a behavior where you've learnt that you're stuck, then it's being able to switch on the awareness that you're not as stuck as you think you are.
Isn't that, that's a tragedy for elephants.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, one of the things, we've talked about before is, are there things in your life that you regret? And I do have a regret, a major regret, and that is that I rode an elephant in Thailand.
Right.
And it was only after that I did more reading around the conditions for the elephants, and it's exactly as you describe. It's horrendous, and it's actually a powerful image for us because we can see it when we look at it. At the elephant, we go, wow, that's a dumb elephant, and we have lots of empathy for it, but we don't necessarily see for ourselves how we're stuck in ways of thinking, or we don't take all the power that we think we have.
Yeah. And
I can give you a really good example of that. I've got people who I know really well who complain regularly about how much they get paid. And I say, yeah, that sounds terrible. When was the last time you raised that with anyone at your work? Oh, they wouldn't give me a raise. No one at my work is interested. And I'm like, on some level, there's a payoff for you in choosing to never raise it, but just feel entitled and bitter about the fact that you're not being offered a pay rise. I'm like, come back and complain when you've asked every Monday for 6 weeks in a row, then you've got something to talk about.
We'll be right back.
If there was one skill that could double your income, advance your career, and increase your ability to influence, it is the skill of presenting. Whether it's on stage, in the boardroom, or at a job interview, the 30-minute presenter program will help take you to the next level. So check out our Instagram page, click the link in the bio, and get started on the 30-minute presenter program. Yeah, that's good. And because some people like and I say some people, it's a big generalization, I'm sure there's some people out there, but they tend to do that thing where they like venting about something, but not actually solving it. I've often heard people say, well, people are coming to me and they're just saying to me at the moment, oh, there's all this drama going on, and they keep coming to me and they keep talking about it. And so I'm just letting you know. It's like, well, first of all, stop listening to them. You're literally becoming like a post box where people are coming and dropping off a letter and putting information in you, and you're just walking around with it all. And you've got to switch on those levels of awareness that say, are you just creating your own monster? Are you actually getting off on the fact that everybody's just dumping this information on you and secretly you love it? Or are you actually just going to go, you know what? I'm just not going to listen to them anymore. I'm just not going to be part of the problem. I'm going to be part of the solution.
That's so funny. We haven't talked about my sister much. I have lots of sisters, but the one that I grew up with is my amazing sister, Kyla. And she tells the most amazing stories about incredible people that I have no interest in and never want to hear about. And so I know that she thinks I'm a terrible person because she will contact me and she'll go, oh my God, you won't believe what happened to this person that I know who knows someone who knows someone, and they said, and I'm like, I don't care. Is that what you rang for? And she goes, well, yeah, I think we should talk about it. It's terrible. And I'm like, I don't have the mental energy or capacity to deal with your stranger danger issues right now. And I think in some respects that's been really good for it's been good for my side of the relationship. Yeah. One of the things that fascinated me about this idea of voices in our head or in your head is that there are some people who have no audible voice in their head. So this is an actual state of being,
right?
That people don't think out loud in their head at all. And that just blows my mind. I know sometimes when you say to guys, what are you thinking? And they say, nothing. And it's actually true. But for this whole group of people, it's actually true. They have no audible noise. Wow. I can't imagine. Even just as we're speaking now, I've had 100 other thoughts, namely that I should have bought the gummy bears.
Well, I don't know. What are some of the things that you have told yourself over the years, maybe? Why don't we start there? Because I've got a few things that I've told myself over the years that have not been helpful. But maybe if we start with you, what are some of the stories in your head, Sash?
Well, I'm interested in this idea of the things that our brain tells us not necessarily being true. And there's a number of reasons for that. So if you think about, in evolutionary terms, the whole fight or flight response, our brains are protecting us from danger all the time. So when they perceive a dangerous situation, they're giving us a message, right? You should get out of here. But what that sometimes means is that we back away from discomfort. So some of the voices in my head that I find are unhelpful is when I have a voice telling me not to do something because it's risky. And I don't mean risky in terms of, don't drive the car too fast. That's a good voice to listen to, children. Everybody should listen to that voice. But the voices that say, don't put yourself forward to that opportunity, you're not ready, or that gig's not for you, or, the biggest lie of all, he's out of your league. Like, hello, how can anyone be out of my league, man? Have you met me?
If anything, you're out of other people's leagues, Sasha. Flashback to Todd there.
Todd.
Well, I have told myself things over the years. I remember having a belief that I just wasn't old enough for real responsibility and opportunity. And I remember telling myself that into my 30s. And then all of a sudden I was like, what's that about? And now I've kind of got that one where it goes, maybe you're a bit old for stuff coming up. So I think I've had a 10-year window, Sash. And now I'm like, what? That's crazy, right? Like, it's just such a weird thing that you just tell yourself over and over. And when you tell yourself enough times, your subconscious will start believing that it's true, and you'll actually start adjusting your behavior around that.
Well, people using woo-woo terms talk about manifesting, right? We manifest our reality, and this is why we have vision boards, and you attract what you are looking for, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm a bit kind of jury's out for me on that kind of thing. But I do think there's a danger when we get these repeated loops playing in our head, telling us stories about ourselves that may or may not be true. And I love the idea that you're speaking to, which is that some of us are perpetually in the best years are yet to come. And so right now is not my time, but it's coming. And then that's offset by, as you've described, you get older. You go, well, the best years are behind me. And if we're never present to the opportunity that exists in the here and now, then it's never the right time. And those are lies. I remember working with sales teams in various industries, actually, and salespeople have fantastic things they tell themselves about when the right time is to make a sale. So I don't know if you know this, but it's very difficult to sell in January because our customers are just getting back from Christmas.
That's right.
February is problematic because here in the Southern Hemisphere, schools are just going back. People are very busy getting their kids settled into schools. March, well, what happens in March? It's the end of the financial year. So people are battling their budgets. They cannot make decisions then. In April, it's the Easter holidays. May is just mental because of, and there's actually reasons why nobody ever buys anything if you go through every month of the year.
That's right.
And the challenge is, can you switch on your self-awareness to say, what are the things I tell myself, or what are the voices in my head saying that aren't true and don't serve me?
Well, even as recent as the kind of the last 12 months, like during lockdown, during COVID, obviously with my hip situation, I haven't been able to do as much exercise. And I got out of the shower one day and looked at myself in the shower and said, "Oh, you fat idiot." And I thought, what the heck? It's actually not what I said, I swore. But it was like, where did that come from? And I remember at the time just going, what the heck is that about? Like, to get to the point where just out of the blue, I looked at myself and said that, which isn't true on either, fronts. But I'm like, those little things that all of a sudden you just go, where did that come from? Now, if you're not aware of the fact that you've even said it, then you might start saying it over and over, and then it becomes the soundtrack of our lives, where we just say these things to ourselves when we look in the mirror, or when we do something silly when we're driving, or whatever it is, that disruptive and really damaging self-talk that goes on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting picking up on that is I can recognize really easily the difference in the way I treat other people inside my head and the way I treat myself. And I've shared this with people before, that I see big women at the beach in their bikinis, and I love it. I love it so much. It speaks to freedom and it's so empowering. And I put my bikini on and I wear it, and there's days when I go, wow, this is amazing. I've got 2 legs. I have so much to be grateful for. And there's other days where I have quite a lot of self-loathing about how I look, but I recognize it, and I don't sit and dwell on it, but I realize that it's a constant conversation with myself to snap out of that way of thinking.
Yeah, and then it's also probably a choice to maybe start saying some things with a positive spin on them inside our head, or even out loud, if that kind of helps us, that we can actually create positive narratives, and so that we are in control of the narrative and the narrative's not in control of us.
Tell me more about that. We are in control of the story's not in control of us.
So when you get to the point where you've been saying something over and over again, and it becomes subconscious, and then it becomes habitual, and then it becomes something that you behave into, you can actually start to reverse the effects on that by having some positive affirmation. I know, affirmation can be a bit ooky kooky, but, those things that you say to yourself over and over, that actually eventually, as you say them, and if you embody them and you kind of put some movement to them and they've got energy, you will start to believe those as well. Like, you can actually start to reverse some of those psychological negative ones that you may have been saying to yourself. And I went and saw a business coach a little while ago. And
I thought you were going to say a fortune teller or a clairvoyant or something. I thought, that's not like you.
Even though my granddad did own a circus, Sash, not so much into the fortune telling there. But went to see a business coach, and they talked a lot about, that positive thought process, and what are you kind of going to be saying to yourself on a regular basis to try to keep action going, keep yourself motivated. And we also unpacked some of the stuff that was negative, like that I'm not old enough, and now I'm too old, and I've missed my 10-year window. So then you kind of use that. But then I have also done some stuff in the counselling sense, where I was really struggling with a few things, and this counsellor helped me with a technique called thought blocking. And, I know in meditation and mindfulness, you tend to let your thoughts come and go and you feel them. But there were some things I was just really struggling with when they popped up in my head. And so she just said, whenever you're thinking of that thing, just say block. Like, actually just say it out loud, and just keep saying block until it goes away, because you can't be saying block and thinking of the thing at the same time. And I was like, this is ridiculous. That is not going to work. You know what, Sash? it actually worked. It really did. It was stuff that I was catastrophizing in my head around situations that could have gone worse, and I was starting to, I guess, imagine that they had gone worse, and this was a way to break that pattern.
Yeah, I love that. There's this fantastic clip of Tony Robbins, of all people, kind of the very worst and the very best of that sort of motivational guru, and he's trying to help someone overcome their fears. And so he does exactly that, which is interrupt the thought pattern. So when this guy's talking about his fear of, I can't remember, it might be a fear of flying. And as the guy talks about it, Tony Robbins hits him on the head with this plastic snake. And so as the guy's talking about his fear of flying, he's also going, ow, ow, because Tony Robbins literally just keeps hitting him. And it's a pattern interrupter, which is interesting. But, I mean, last episode we talked about neuroplasticity. We didn't use those words, but this idea that you can rewire your brain. So looking for gratitude changes the filter by which you see the world. And so some of this thought blocking, a little bit like cock blocking, but we can talk about that later. What thought blocking does is it does interrupt that pattern. And that's hugely, hugely valuable. I like to think of this idea that so often, the things that we tell ourselves, they've been ingrained in us from a really young age. And so many of us can't control the parenting that we've had, or the primary school teachers, or the friends that we had when we were young. But so many of our patterns get laid really early. And I've been enormously blessed that if I imagine that you put a tape into a cassette player, and on the tape it says, "Things Jill has said about Sacha." That's my mum. And if I play that tape, it's going to be an overwhelming, I'm proud of you, you've worked hard, you can do it. So I'm really blessed to have come from that. And if I play the tape of my dad, same things, but also my dad having the humility to say, hey, I got that one wrong and I'm sorry. And those were such amazing role models, but also amazing that that's the track that I get to play. I know people really close to me who don't have that in terms of their parents. They can play a tape of what their mother or father said to them growing up, and it's, you're good for nothing, you're as bad as your mother, you're as bad as your father, you'll never amount to much. And so for people who have those tapes playing in their head, that can cause limitations through so many aspects of life. And I just have so much empathy, but also want to encourage people who are in that position to do the work to stop that noise, because that noise is not true, it's not kind, it's not helpful, it doesn't serve you, and you deserved better in your upbringing, but you get to control what you do about it now.
Yeah, and let's pick up on maybe those statements that you've used, because those statements are often three statements that we use when we're giving people feedback. Before we give people feedback, think about, is it true what we're about to say? Is it helpful, and is it kind? And we can probably use the same kind of three statements when we're thinking about some of that negative thinking that we might be doing. We start to play the tape, or we start to run the record, and we all of a sudden just stop and think, is this true? Is it helpful? And is it kind? Now, if the answer to those is no, then we just need to press stop. Like, we need to find a way to not play that tape, or block the pattern, or interrupt the pattern, or choose to play a new narrative and actually start to repeat something to ourselves that is kind, that is true, and is helpful.
It's about having compassion for ourselves, right?
Yeah, it is.
And I love two things that come from this. One is, if you ever go out on a Friday or Saturday night into clubs, you can see the people who have listened to this podcast or some similar message in the past. Because as they get out of their Uber, they're doing this like ritual incantation. I am the man. I am the man. People will like me. I am attractive. I am a sexy machine. I'm a hot chick magnet. Have you not come across that?
I'm not sure. Does he also go, and my name is Todd, and I'm proud of Todd?
that ability sometimes to be defined by what we say no to, not what we say yes to. And I am spectacularly rubbish at this. I look back at my life and I think it's a miracle I've achieved anything at all because I'm so scatterbrained in my approach. And partly I understand it. When I switch my self-awareness on, I go, you know what? I love to help. So when someone says, hey, could you do this? I go, sure, I could do that. I don't have that crippling thing that some people have where they go, no, I'm not skilled, I'm not experienced, I'm not qualified. I have that masculine gift of going, sure. I've watched a TV program about that once. I could do open heart surgery. But what it means is I just say yes to stuff because I want to help. And the motivation is pure. But I can really see how in some respects it stopped me achieving a little bit more in particular areas, if that makes sense. I could have been more focused. And it's something I'm working on now is to say, what are you prepared to give up in pursuit of what it is that you want? And that's the question I think we all have to ask. What are you prepared to give up in order to get what you want? Yeah. And I think marriage is like that, right? You have to stop dating other people if you want to be married. That's what you're giving up. Yeah. You're giving up that, right?
Hopefully.
Supposedly.
But you're right, because if you're not prepared to give it up, then that is the priority for you. And so you can have all the desire in the world about wanting to write a book or, produce a podcast or whatever it is that you want to do. But if you're not prepared to give up other things, then it's not really a priority for you at all.
It's just an idea, a bit of a dream, a wishful thinking, because all you're doing is thinking about it. I mean, I think it leads into this idea too, where I'm all for work-life balance, whatever that is. I would never express it like that. But this idea that we have time for many things that are important in our lives, that we have time for our families and time to nurture relationships as well as achieve professional goals. I think that's worthy. But I understand that there are times that we have to be absolutely focused and give more time and energy to a particular facet of our lives. And that's completely okay.
Yes.
So when Chris, my husband, started Coffee Culture, he spent the first 4 years working almost every day and working almost all day, every day. It was years before he took a couple of days off in a row. You might go, wow, that's just crazy talk from the person who will look at Chris and say, wow, he's so lucky now. I'm like, well, a couple of things went right for him along the way, but he has earned every single thing that's come his way from those 4 years of single-minded focus. Now, you might not need 4 years on something, but I can think back too about when our babies were little. And when my babies were first born, I spent 23 out of 24 hours dedicated to their care. That's not sustainable. And as the children grow, they don't need that long. But no one says to a young mum, well, I think your focus is in the wrong place. And I think we need to treat some of our work projects or some of our professional ambitions with a little bit more of that kind of intensity. Otherwise, we're just kind of like the lions who are jogging towards the hyena. You're never going to get there unless you've got a laser focus.
Yeah. And that's really insightful, that whole, for a time or a season thing, because there are times when you need that drive and you need that unreasonable focus on things. And then there are times when you don't, and it's okay to kind of take your foot off the accelerator a little bit and even giving yourself permission to do that. Like I know my kids at the moment are hopping on a bus to go to Easter camp and they're away for 4 days. And Jo last night, she said, are you going to come and wave them goodbye? And I said, no, I'm going to do the podcast. And I said, because if I don't, my head won't be in the right space for the rest of the weekend. And so I said goodbye last night and I set them up and did all that kind of stuff, because for me, this today is the priority. If it was 2 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been like that. When they're a bit younger, I would have wanted to be there and wave them goodbye and that kind of stuff. So you're right. It's a season, it's a time, it's a focus. And I know my kids love me.
hope they still love you when they come back from Easter camp.
Awkward. Today we're talking about some base human fears, and I think it segues quite nicely into that conversation because when those moments happen, they sometimes trigger something within you, and when you have that awareness of maybe what that trigger was, you might be able to at least put some analysis around why you responded that way, or put some tools and strategies in place so that you don't respond that way possibly to a similar situation in the future.
Yeah, if you have switch on that self-awareness again so that you understand where you are vulnerable, so understand what your risks are. So when we talk about base human fears, it's things that threaten us, things that we want to avoid feeling. And so if you can anticipate a situation where you might feel a particular way, it's really useful to be able to say, oh, that's just that boring old thing that I experience where I get afraid of this thing. So I can actually just persevere through that because I anticipate it, I experience it, and I move on from it. It doesn't have to control everything about you in that moment.
Yeah. So why don't we start with the first one? And the first one is really the fear of not being liked. And I think this one is quite an interesting topic for the fact that a lot of people may not put out an opinion, may not take a chance, may not put themselves out there because, well, what if someone doesn't like me as a result of what I do, what I'm saying, and how would that make me feel? I don't know if you've got any examples of times where this has become true for you, Sacha. Is this something that resonates with you or not?
I think it's something that terrifies me. Not so much this idea of whether people like me or not, because I grew out of caring about that a long time ago. And in some respects, I'm really lucky. Yeah, really lucky that I generally don't care too much what other people think of me. But the terrifying bit is how rare that is to find in a person, because just about everybody is very concerned with what other people think, and it's really natural and it's a very human thing to want to fit in. It's a human thing to want to be accepted and to want to be loved. And the result of that is that we can sometimes be afraid to stand out or afraid to take a risk or to let people know what we think, because we absolutely don't want to hear from our colleagues and our friends that we have in some way upset them or let them down or behaved in a way that doesn't accord with their values or the things that they want. And so we can live this really kind of disconnected or this very quiet life where we just end up being really vanilla. And that's a horrible way to live when we're not being true to the fullest expression of who we are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think sometimes that can even start like really early, right? Like in our school peer groups, it's, do you want to be the person that is saying something that's an unpopular or you feel is right and you want to express an opinion, and then suddenly you have the judgment of your peers, and what does that look like? And we know what kids are like, and they ostracize people because of the way they might want to think different or because of an opinion. And yet it's a real leadership trait for younger kids to be able to stand up and say, I don't agree with that, or I want to be nice to this person and I don't care that you're not being nice to this person. But that fear of not being liked, it's almost like an acceptance thing that can happen early on. And if you have enough references for that, then it can become something that continues on, and you may not be recognizing it in a meeting or in a work situation, but that could be where it's come from.
Yeah, completely. And so I think most of us have experiences from our childhood where either we've been ostracized or we've been part of a group that was ostracizing someone else, and we've been stuck where we know that how the group was behaving was horrible, but we weren't the ones that stood up and we regret that. Or perhaps we were on the receiving end of some nastiness and that's impacted us moving forward. So there's a couple of aspects to this. One is, if you have deep psychological trauma from your childhood, this is not the podcast for you, because we're going to give it the once over lightly. We're going to say something like, get some healing, get some help. But recognize that if you are stuck in this trap of perpetually ruminating on what people think of you, rest assured most people aren't thinking of you at all. They're thinking about themselves. So those times, if you use the meeting, we talked about meetings last week, you'll be in a meeting, you say something stupid, on the way home, all you do is replay over and over again in your head, oh, I said that stupid thing, people aren't going to like me, they're going to hate me, I'm not going to get invited to that staff do, and all of this goes on in our head, and we're just making up a story about something that happened that's not true. Most people won't even remember what you said because they're thinking about themselves. So I think it's not that we want to give people permission to go around being an asshole because, I don't care what people think of me. So many people who talk about, I'm set free to be myself, they're actually dicks because they parade their freedom of expression in a way that actually inhibits others. It doesn't give other people space, to grow or space to be. But it's really damaging when you are perpetually living in this state of what do people think of me. There's a great expression that says what people think of you is none of your business. You can't control what's going on inside someone's head. And I think what's a useful process to do is to, when you're in that situation, is to ask yourself, what do you want your legacy to be? Or if legacy is too big a concept, how do you want people to remember you after an interaction? And if you say, well, I want them to say that person made a contribution, or that person was courageous, or that person stood up for what was right, or that person expressed an opinion that was different and that opened my eyes to something. For me personally, I would much rather be respected than be liked. And I'm not at any risk at being over-liked, right? It's not something that's going to happen for me. I've waved that ship goodbye. But I come back to saying, I don't want to be afraid of the judgment of others.
All right, that's the end of the episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed that mashup. If you have not listened to those episodes, why not go back and explore them? They are episode 11, 28, 30, and 40. Also, if you're a new listener to the show, why not jump into our DMs on our Instagram page and say hi? We would love to hear from you. And if you haven't reviewed us yet, please take the opportunity to jump onto Apple Podcasts and give us a review. And remember, for every 5-star rating, an angel gets its wings. All right, have a great week. Catch you next time.